please.
Yeah,
Look,
there you go.
look at it, okay? Am I like this?
No.
Am I like this?
No.
No.
No, this head, look, maybe that's why they put an extra head.
Boom. Roasted.
Street fighter on your windowsill. The weapon is peace. The word is chill.
Hello there, gang, and welcome to another episode of Displaying Model Behaviour, the Earth's mightiest action figure video podcast. So take off your pants, crack a beer, and let's talk toys. Let's talk about the 25 worst Marvel Legends of 2021. Now, don't come at me saying, Dave, you're such a snob. You used to love Marvel Legends. Now you say how bad they are. Shh. Let me stop you there. Quiet. Shh. You're confused. I just did a list of my 25 best Marvel Legends of 2021. I still love Marvel Legends. And when they are good, they are great. But when they are bad, boy howdy, can they be pretty awful. So this is the top 25 worst Marvel Legends of 2021. And to kick things off, we have Shriek from the Armadillo Wave. What a huge disappointment this figure was. Ever since I started collecting Marvel Legends, I've been wanting a Shriek figure. I wanted to complete my Maximum Carnage teams, and finally she's announced, and she's bad, and it's such a shame. Now look, I appreciate that with her costume design, they were only ever just gonna repaint the standard female buck. At least we got the new buck with the double jointed elbows. That's a good thing, but that should be standard now. Now, what they could have done if they really wanted to push the boat out, they could have sculpted the lines of the costume. That would have been really nice, but I appreciate they weren't gonna do that, and that's okay. But then because of that, the only thing that you have to get right then is the head sculpt. And boy howdy, did they not get it right. Where's this massive mullet haircut come from? Why? What source material were you referencing? Even in Maximum Carnage, like when she first appears in the mid-90s, there's definitely not a mullet going on there. It looks like she's properly shaved it right up the sides of her head, got the business on top, the party at the back. It looks awful. But hey, maybe the face sculpt is okay. Nah, it's not. They really phoned this one in. Shriek is a crazy psychopath who gets off on violence and destruction. And she's got a face on her like she's popping to the shops for a pint of milk and some eggs. Like, ooh, I'm going to the shops now. Little smile on my face. What's that? Well, at least is there some evil intent behind the eyes? Nah, they're just dead. Just random little paint blotch dead eyes and a nothing smile going on her face. But at least when Shriek uses her powers, she has cool power effects. Can they include some of those? Nah, not gonna bother. But when she uses her like psychic abilities, she gets this cool Kirby crackle lightning coming from her eye. You know, the ones that you used on X-Man and Cable, the ones that you know how to do. Shall we do that? Nah, it'll be fine. Well, okay, but she can shoot out like psychic blasts, like lightning. You know, can you give us some of that? Nah, it'll be fine. Okay, last one. When she does use her powers, she like claps her hands together. You know, you've got open palm hands. Do you want to throw a couple of those in? Can you guess what the answer was? Nah, Shriek, huge big disappointment. Now we have the Maestro, and this is a figure that was actually on a lot of people's lists for Figure of the Year, and just look at the Maestro, close your eyes, bear with me, think about the Maestro, future imperfect, all those different trophies and a skull crown and big old boots, and yeah, that's not what this Maestro is, because Marvel Legends were like, people want a Maestro. What's the least effort we can do? Someone, to the source material! Find me the most stripped down, bare bones version of the Maestro, and that's the one we'll do. And someone must have got a gold star at work because they came running into the design office going, I found it, look, old man Logan, look, he's got nothing going on except for a pair of ripped trousers. This is the one we can use. And they did, and everyone breathed a sigh of apathy when we saw it, because yes, he does look like a version of the Maestro. What he doesn't look like is a version of the Maestro that anyone wanted. We want the proper, actual, impressive-looking Maestro. You know, the one you could have actually made with the legs and the boots from Juggernaut that so many customizers have done just to go, look how easy that was. It wasn't difficult. You've got the sculpts right there. But nah, we'll just repaint the 80th Hulk body again for the 6th time now? 7th time now? It's like, I don't mind if you're doing a character like Red Hulk or Grey Hulk, where they don't need any extra things, but the Maestro specifically needs extra accoutrements and trophies and cool stuff that makes him look awesome. And instead Hasbro went, yeah, no, we know that, but don't worry, we're going to sell that to you again in a couple of years when we do it properly. First of all, we'll happily take you $30 for this stripped down version. Nah, homie, don't play that. I'm really, really disappointed with this guy. You know what I was complaining about with Maestro? Yeah, well, let's do that again with Green She-Hulk. Boy, they love doing this with the Hulk family, don't they? We wanted a She-Hulk. They heard us. They listened to us. They said, okay, we're going to give you a She-Hulk. We're going to give you the Grey She-Hulk. And we were like, it's not exactly what we wanted, but you're doing a modern Fantastic Four wave, so okay, we'll give her with the modern aesthetic, that's fine. But we really want a proper Green She-Hulk, okay? And they're like, yeah, don't worry, it's okay. We hear you. We're listening. We're a company that cares. All right, tell you what. Here you go. Green She-Hulk in her ripped up clothes that don't match any other particular specific look that we wanted. Why? Because we wanted the iconic look of Green She-Hulk in her Avengers costume, or even at a push her Fantastic Four costume, but just selling us the exact same figure again, but green. So frustrating because it's not what we wanted. We got an extra head sculpt. I just punched myself in the chin there. We got an extra head sculpt, which is something, but it's an extra head sculpt on a buck that we don't want. We don't want another ripped up clothes She-Hulk. We want the actual She-Hulk wearing her iconic costume. It's like, imagine if we don't have any Spider-Man figures. Like, we have 0 Spider-Man figures. And then Hasbro are like, don't worry, we're finally going to give you a Spider-Man figure. And they give us Spider-Man in just like some ripped up random clothes. And we're like, but no, that's not. And they're like, there you go, we gave you Spider-Man. Look, aren't you happy? And we're like, no, not really. Especially because we know that you're going to do it properly in about a year or two and then charge us again. So this was one of the few options, one of the few instances where I was like, no, this time, definitely. You got me with Maestro. I bought him and I'm kind of annoyed about it. But this Green She-Hulk, nah, not buying that one. Give us the right one or don't bother putting her on the shelf. Now we've got AI Iron Man, and this is one that actually a lot of people really, really like. So I'm not going to rag on him. Alright, but what I am going to say is that, first of all, the body is just the 80th body again, but in yellow and red as opposed to gold and metallic red. But the fact that they're actually doing this figure again for the 20th anniversary line with a proper Tony Stark head as opposed to the hollow one, it just feels like a figure that we don't need. It feels surplus to requirements. It's another one of those issues of Hasbro giving us a figure that's not quite what people wanted and then going, don't worry, we'll sell it to you again another way. And then again with another head sculpt. The holographic Tony head, that could have just been another accessory for a proper Iron Man. Didn't need its own individual figure, but it got it, and because of that, it's going on the list. Next up we have Stiltman, and this is an interesting one because a lot of people actually really, really like this figure, and I can understand that, but at the same time, I'm not one of them. I appreciate something very clever. You put the extra stilt legs in with the ninja who's an army builder. That makes perfect sense. Nice touch. But then the actual character itself just looks like a cheap piece of silver plastic. There's so little paint going on here that it doesn't feel like there's much actual nuance or interest going into the character. His face is just a plain face. There's no kind of expression going on there, which is such a shame because you don't have much else to play with. So at least make the face interesting, but no, they didn't. There's barely any paint there. It just looks cheap. I think they thought, you know what, the selling point of this figure is the fact you can put crazy amounts of legs on him and make him super tall, but that's it. There's nothing else going for it, and that's a real shame. I think he's basic, cheap, and not really something that I want on my shelf. House of X, Jean Grey. This one got a lot of votes from a lot of people, and I can see why. People have been wanting the Marvel Girl costume for a long time, and then we finally get it, and she just feels kind of wrong. She seems very stubby. Her proportions don't seem quite right, and she just doesn't sort of stand very well on the shelf, like at all, actually, like literally doesn't stand well on the shelf. Any female character with like high heels and stuff, that's always going to be a problem. But maybe you could actually break from tradition, and if you have a character with small feet like that, throw in a stand that you can... Nah, sorry, what am I talking? That's madness, heresy. Of course you're not going to include a stand, even if the character has teeny tiny little feet that don't really stand up. Plus she's got a nothing going on looking expression on her face, and her skirt kind of restricts movement, and a lot of people have had to like cut it and customize it to make it actually look like a more interesting figure. Yeah, this one, she didn't move the needle as far as decent figures go this year. Next up we have Parker Robbins, the Hood, or the Angry Marvel Legends Collector, as the Hasbro team themselves dubbed him. Thanks guys, way to win over your audience. Well, congratulations, because you've got some Angry Marvel Legends collectors. This is the Hood. The one defining thing about the character is his hood. Guess what doesn't actually fit on the figure? Yeah, the hood. There's a reason why he's in a flight stand. If you actually have him standing on the ground, his hood is elevated above his head because it's too tall for him. How did that get past the design phase? That's completely bonkers. It's so ridiculous. In a year where you started experimenting a little bit with some cloth goods, like on the Retro Doom, that might have even been last year, to be honest. But still, this is, if there was a figure that actually called out for some cloth goods, it would be the Hood. What did you do? You went, nah, it'll be fine. Well, what's the worst thing that could happen by making the Hood solid plastic? Well, I guess if we made it that it's taller than he is, that could be oh, that's what we did. Yeah, okay, well, how can we remedy this? How can we at least make it a good figure? Well, let's give him a decent Parker Robbins head. Nah, let's just do a random shouting man. But it doesn't look anything like the Parker Robbins character. Go and look at any issue of Avengers or anything anywhere the Hood appears. That's not Parker Robbins. Doesn't look anything like him whatsoever. The only good thing about this face sculpt is that it has given so much material to Marvel Legends photographers, because that's so much fun. Articulated comic book art. I love watching some of these different YouTube channels and Instagram pages where they do cool photos, and the Hood has just opened up so many opportunities for a random angry shouting man. But what he's not appropriate for is Parker Robbins. Then we got these things. We've got these bullet effects here, if you can call them bullet effects. I mean, yeah, I know they're meant to be like magic bullets, but again, the design phase. How did this get through the design phase? Look at these things. Just someone looked at these and went, yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, let's go with that. Really? Psycho Man from the Fantastic Four Retro Wave. This is a guy who, again, had a lot of hype and excitement going for him because he's a big old A-list villain. Is he A-list? Maybe. For the Fantastic Four he is, and the Fantastic Four were a bit underrepresented, so it was good to have him finally come in. And he just looks kind of cheap in my eye. It's a bit of a shame, but I think because his costume is so much white going on there, it just looks like a big chunk of white plastic, you know, which is what it is. It's hard to get around that. But unfortunately, there's just so much of it, he just doesn't look very interesting on the shelf. Then you couple with that the fact that his face sculpt doesn't really have anything going on. There's not much you can do with him as a figure. I want to make him look more interesting or more dynamic, maybe more of a smile or a smirk or a grimace or a growl or anything to make his face more interesting. But it's just very, very plain Jane on a white spacesuit type body that looks very, very plain Jane. On the whole, it's a very, very plain character. Age of Apocalypse Cyclops. I gave out about this figure so much because he's such a disappointment. That's the real kicker for me. Very similar complaints actually to the Shriek figure, in that I thought that maybe they were just going to do like a cheap kind of repaint for the body, but at least then get the head right, and instead they just didn't bother with anything. First of all, you don't have to do a cheap repaint for the body, because first of all, Cyclops in Age of Apocalypse, like, he has boots. He's not just wearing a jumpsuit, you know, he actually has details going on here, which he didn't include just because he thought you could get away with not doing it. But don't worry, there's a guy sat in his bedroom who's gonna call you on it. So yeah, he's just wearing this morph suit, which looks really kind of weird. There's tons and tons of artwork of him wearing proper actual boots, but that would have taken some extra sculpting, so Nah, not gonna do that. Then, of course, we go up to the head itself, and what's up with his hairline? His hairline is further back on his head than mine is, and that's saying a lot. At least I have the good graces to wear a baseball cap when I do this show. But this guy was sculpted by someone who clearly didn't like Cyclops, and he's like, well, let's give him this kind of comb over here with this receding hairline. Looks awful. Then, because of the amount of armor on his hands, like, he doesn't have a huge amount of articulation, but it's good enough. So at least you've got something going on there where they actually designed around a design feature or what might have been a design problem. But then they didn't give you anything extra to go with him to make him worth buying. It was just very, very disappointing. The fact he's got just kind of a dead neutral expression, and just, again, this ballet leotard that he's wearing, not really suitable for a dystopian age of apocalypse type future, and this guy is not suitable for a wave that is otherwise, besides him, absolutely fantastic. You knew it had to come up on this list eventually. Animated Venom, the super expensive special edition, do you like cardboard boxes because you're going to pay an extra $10 for it, version of Venom. This is another great example of Hasbro hearing our cries and going, what's that? What's that? You want a larger Venom on the Omega Red body? Okay, yep, we'll do that. We'll give it to you. There you go. You like that? You like those holes in his shoulders? You like the animated paint job? You like the huge price increase? No? Well, tough, because you're going to buy it anyway. And people did, so more power to you. But me? No, I'm not saying that I'm like steadfast in my convictions. I just don't have much money to spend. So I'm like, no, he is not making the cut. Also, I genuinely laughed out loud when I saw an interview where they said, oh yeah, we couldn't plug up the holes on Venom because we were using the buck at the same time to make Omega Red for the 5-pack. Really? Because you had a gun to your head? You had to make those two figures at exactly the same time so that you couldn't just make one and then make another one a bit later. No. You had to make them at exactly the same time, so it was physically impossible to plug up the holes on a super expensive deluxe figure. You're just gonna repaint it as minimally as possible. Wow. How about even throwing in some symbiote tendrils so you can like plug them in there so it actually makes it... No, not going to bother with that either. You're going to pay what we tell you to and shut up. And that's exactly what they've done. And boy, that kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Speaking of the Wolverine 5-pack, we have Cyber. Wolverine does not have a huge assortment of like A-list villains. You've got Sabretooth and Lady Deathstrike, maybe Silver Samurai, but it does start to trickle out a little bit from there. Cyber is a big A-list character for Wolverine. And what did they do? Just a lazy repaint. And it's such a shame because the whole thing about Cyber is that he's this big, hulking, terrifying looking character who Wolverine is genuinely afraid of. Now, okay, I know that the character has since been killed off and then got a different body, and it was all very weird and silly, and maybe his new body is smaller, but therefore, of course, they're going to go for the smallest, cheapest version of the character to do, because the Cyber that we all know, the one who was first introduced to Wolverine, is easily more of a deluxe Hulk type figure. You know, that's the kind of body we're talking about here, with the metal arms and a terrifying looking face. He had a cigar as well, but I know that we don't do smoking, so that's fine. But still, he was someone who reveled in his horribleness, basically. So instead we just get a very plain looking kind of expression and just a plain blue kind of body, and it's just such a missed opportunity to do a great figure when instead they just did a passable figure. And when you're charging what you're charging for that 5-pack passable, yeah, passable doesn't cut it. Speaking of expensive sets, MODOK World Domination Tour. Oh boy. Now look, I kind of get some logic maybe in that perhaps MODOK didn't sell as well as they had hoped, because I saw he went onto clearance really quickly, which I was surprised by, because I love the MODOK figure. I think it's fantastic. I bought it at full price and I was happy to do so. But then maybe they were like, look guys, we got to recoup our cost on this buck somehow. What are we going to do? Well, let's throw some Elvis glasses on him and then sell him for like $70. No one's going to buy that. What if we throw in a figure that people really want in order to complete their next wave set? Boom! Give that man a raise. The amount of Elvis MODOKs that I'm going to see for sale because people just wanted the captain for their next wave. They're like, what am I going to do with this Elvis MODOK now? Well, at least Hasbro managed to make some money back on that buck, selling a whole bunch of Elvis MODOKs that honestly, I don't think anyone was really clamoring for. Going back to the Hulk buck now with Compound Hulk. Now look, this is one I'm not actually too salty about because the Compound Hulk body is exactly like it should be. Like, that's a fine reuse of the 80th Hulk buck because it's the ripped up trousers. That works fine, no problem with that. But the fact that they literally just did a repaint of that Hulk, it was a repaint of the Red Hulk actually. I thought at first, oh well, at least they've done a new head sculpt because that makes sense. It's the two different Hulks merged together. No, they just repainted the Red Hulk head sculpt. And they still didn't include any fire effects for Red Hulk. No, it was just so basic. They really were just kicking around their offices one day, looking at the 80th Hulk and were like, what else can we do with this? Compound Hulk, I guess? Can we do any extra accessories? Different hands? Oh, that was something that annoyed me. They did less work for this one because at least the Red Hulk had black fingernails. They went to the trouble of at least painting the fingernails. This one, no, didn't even bother with that. They were like, nah, you're getting two different skin tones. You're not going to get painted fingernails. Get out of here. Yeah, it was the cheapest possible way of re-releasing that buck, and God bless them, they did it. The High Evolutionary. You know what's wrong with that name? He's not especially high because he's a very basic stature for a character who really should be a little bit more imposing. High Evolutionary isn't a giant of a character at all, but when you put him side by side with Mysterio and Mysterio's towering over him, it's like, nah, that's not a great choice you guys made for that character. And it's a real shame because, again, High Evolutionary is a heavy hitter in the Marvel Universe, and I just don't feel like they've really done him justice. Some of it was a bit unfortunate because of the design of the character. There's so much pink going on that really it just looks like a blob of pink plastic, and it looks kind of cheap, and that's a real shame. But again, his face, you lose all the details because it's just pink. There's not really much nuance that can go on there. And I appreciate that High Evolutionary is kind of a stoic character. He's not a crazy, wide-eyed, smiling guy, and he's not an angry, grimacing kind of character. He is just very kind of poker-faced. But because of that, with the pink all over, you just can't really see much for him. And ultimately, he just looks like a bit of a disappointment. You know, there are a lot of jobs that you probably wouldn't want to have in the Marvel Universe, and being a Vault Guardsman is one of them, but at least you should get a good action figure of yourself. Nope, you do not. I've heard a lot of complaints about this figure, myself included, because at a glance he's not that bad. But then, for me personally, and other folks have had as well, loads of paint scuffing and defects that go on with the different details on his wrists. The thing is, there's not much paint on here, because it's just green, you know, so there's some darker and lighter greens, but then the fact that that's all you get, and then when it's on here, it's done badly, that's a real sticking point for me. This figure feels very cheap. I appreciate it's not always easy to make a costume look more impressive than it is. Like, this is just what a Vault Guardsman looks like. But then maybe, you know what? You could have given him some better accessories. You could have given him a decent gun. This isn't the Vault Guardsman gun. This isn't even a perfect one for him, but it's better than what he came with, which was this pathetic little pew pew type gun. Like, you're supposed to be guarding like the Juggernaut and Venom and like, you know, big heavy hitters. Like, I would not feel safe going in. It might as well be like me full size going, all right, you got to promise to behave yourself or else pew. Like, that's terrible. A Vault Guardsman should have had a big old beefy BFG type weapon. Not what we got from this guy. Then, I'm not someone who complains about like marbling and stuff, but there is a lot going on with this figure. It just feels like it was a missed opportunity to do something that was a lot more fun, especially one who could arguably be a decent army builder. You could have given us a different head, like an unmasked one, or you could have given us like some accessories that would make him like more of a jury member, but instead, nah, he feels pretty cheap. And also, I have to use a stand for this guy because I swear, like, his feet are not as flat as they should be. Like, these are big feet. They should be easy to stand. No, this guy's damn near impossible to stand. Drives me crazy. He goes on the list. Domino from the X-Force 3-pack. Domino, you broke my heart with this one. Or Copycat, all right? Not Domino, Copycat. Whatever you want to call the character, call her one that is a little bit disappointing. Mainly it's the face sculpt. I don't even have her to reference now because I sold her, but there's just like, it looks bad. It's such a shame because the earlier X-Force Domino that we got, the more modern version in like the black gear, that face sculpt looks really pretty. It's a really, really great Domino. Whereas this one is the derpiest of derpy faces. She's got this open mouth breathing kind of expression on her with nothing going on eyes. It's such a downgrade from the previous Domino that we had. The body costume is like, it's fine. Her head sculpt, her headdress thing looks a bit weird, but that's also kind of how it looked anyway, so I'll forgive that. But still, it's just that face sculpt on a figure that so many people were looking forward to was a big disappointment. Sue Storm from the Fantastic Four Retro Wave. You knew this was coming. My goodness, what a face on her. It's something that you again think, how did this get past the design phase? Who looked at this? Who was in charge of seeing that and going, yes, that's perfect, go with it? Because it's not. I think we can all agree that is a face that is going to haunt our dreams for quite a while, because people were really excited for a retro Fantastic Four wave. People missed out on the Walgreens one. They were very hard to come by now, and we wanted like a great classic blue costumed, team that we haven't had for a while. And we finally got it. And the whole thing, it had its ups and downs. I was going to say it's disappointing, but it had its ups and downs. And certainly Sue Storm's face, that was definitely a black mark on that wave because it just looked awful. And unfortunately, the only way that they could improve it was to make her completely clear and invisible. That's what you want to do. If you want to make your Fantastic Four, don't have that one. Have the Hasbro Pulse Invisible Sue. The only problem I have now is that I've got the invisible one. No way is anyone going to buy the other one from me. That's just going to be sitting in my fodder box until the end of time. Now, you want a cheap-ass figure that they made just to fill out the wave? I present to you Holographic Iron Man. Oh my giddy lord. This thing, they literally must have just made the wave of figures and then gone, oh wait, we forgot we're a figure short. Just cast a random MCU Iron Man in blue plastic and we'll call him Hologram Iron Man. Genius. Give that man a raise. This thing, absolute trash, pointless garbage. First of all, it's an MCU figure that they're palming off into the 616 comic book line. They're like, yeah, but it's fine. We're doing like a hologram version, so it doesn't really matter. Oh, we know. Especially when he has these big clunky feet that they don't have any kind of sideways swivel, so they're really just like, you can't do anything with him. Like, he stands. That's it. Congratulations, you got like a little blue Iron Man Oscar on your shelf. Pointless, waste of time, waste of space, more importantly, waste of money, guys. You really were taking the mick with this one, and it shows. Retro Spider-Man 2099. This guy, I'm so annoyed at myself. I shouldn't even be annoyed at Hasbro. I should be annoyed at myself because I didn't have an official 2099. I had a knockoff. I thought, he does look good in the box. Maybe I should go for him. I went for him, took him out, and instantly his leg broke at the hip. And I was like, oh, why? Why didn't I spend my money, the same amount of money, on a modern figure with a modern buck, with modern sculpting, with modern paintwork, with modern joints that aren't so brittle and old and broken from a mold that was made like 8, 9, 10 years ago, that it wasn't just going to fall apart in my hands. I'm so annoyed at myself. I should have known better. But also, it's Hasbro's duty of care responsibility to protect stupid people from themselves. And this should never have been on the shelf. If you wanted to do a new 2099 Spider-Man, then do a new 2099 Spider-Man. The retro body is right there. It's right there waiting for you. All you had to do was slap a coat of paint on it. It wouldn't have taken much work for you, but you were like, nah, just release this old ratchet figure for the same retail price as a brand new sculpt. And people will buy it because people, meaning myself, are idiots. And sometimes we get a little spendy and sometimes we make some really bad decisions. Black and Gold Spider-Man, again from the Armadillo wave. Why does this figure even exist? Not gonna ruin anything from the film, but it is the most pointless nothing costume ever. I'm amazed they pushed it so hard. From Hot Toys doing versions, we got a select version coming out. This is a nothing suit. It's so pointless, they don't even give it a proper name. It's just the black and gold suit. Like, they were looking in the design room and they were like, what should we call this thing? I don't know. It's black and gold. Should we call it the black and gold suit? Yeah. Well, it's got some red on it. Shall we call it the black and gold and red suit? Nah, too many letters. Can't be bothered. Too much effort. That's it. And it doesn't even match his proper look in the film, which I appreciate you do with concept art, but it's just so nondescript. A pointless figure does not need to exist, and when it was existed, it was done as a cheap repaint of an existing one. Nothing going for it, no good accessories, nothing to swap out, an absolute wave filler, and definitely deserving of a place on this list. And finally, taking up multiple spots, but I've condensed them all down a little bit just to make this a nice round list, is the entire Eternals wave. That was something that so many people wrote in and said, like, dude, just the entire Eternals wave. Which is kind of a little bit unfair, I feel, because a lot of those figures, they're not actually that bad mechanically, but just no one really likes the Eternals. It was a swing and a miss. And I'm not here to bash the movie. I didn't mind the movie. I thought it was okay. But it seems like there was a hard marketing push for Eternals, that the lights were not on and burning bright for the masses. They weren't jumping for Eternals figures. And all I'm hearing from a lot of people is that if you want to keep your shop pegs warm, put some Eternals figures on there, because no one's picking them up. And it's a shame, but then again, when Salma Hayek is on Jimmy Fallon, knocking her own figure, was it Jimmy Fallon? Either way, like, that kind of made me chuckle, seeing those pictures of Salma Hayek going like, look, this is my figure, it looks nothing like me. It's like, wow, boom, roasted. So because of that, because of the Salma Hayek seal of approval on this list, I'm giving the top spots altogether to the Eternals wave. Not terrible figures, but also not something that anyone will look back on 2021 and go, yeah, those were good. And folks, that does it for my top 25 worst Marvel Legends of 2021. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you didn't think that I came off too salty, because it's just fun to rant sometimes. My goodness, my backdrop is pure Marvel Legends because I love the line so much. If you didn't like the sort of negativity going on in this video, then check out like every other one I make, because normally I'm singing the praises of all the things I love. And I even love these guys, because sometimes you gotta root for the underdog, and there are some big underdogs on this list. Folks, thanks very much for watching, and until next time, keep displaying model behavior.
Cup of coffee. Big time coffee.